What made you think green-purple was the pick in a meta where even Artabax, a green-purple guru, didn't think it was the choice for this set? Post-Bucky nerf errata.
Oh, so we will definitely.
Last weekend, I saw 3 green-purple decks surprise everyone by making top 64 at the Bochum Disney Lorcana Challenge. Bennet is one of those 3 players who probably isn't surprised at this result, and today I'm here to ask them why.
Hey, thank you so much, Alphonse, for having me. Such a pleasure to be here with you. And yeah, I was a green-purple believer. I'm still a green-purple believer, and I am glad to see that 3 of the green-purple lists made it into top 64.
Will always be a green-purple believer, possibly.
Possibly. Lorcana has a lot of different combinations and deck choices you can do. So yeah, possibly.
Okay, so let's get straight into it. First, I really do want to ask, what made you think green-purple was the pick in a meta where even Artabax, a green-purple guru, didn't think it was the choice for this set, especially with how oppressive green-steel has been?
So I used to play green-purple in set 3 because of Artabax's list. I call him the father of green-purple. And I had so much fun playing the deck. I saw the benefits of playing the deck, the upsides, the things it can do. And even though I understood every argument the players said in set 4 why green-purple is not good anymore, it can still do the same things. So I at least wanted to try if it's dead. And for some reason, I had a lot of success with playing the deck back then on Pixelborn. Jammed a lot of games, won a lot of games, and got into my head thinking maybe it's the right decision to bring it to a DLC, especially because everyone is doubting the deck and therefore is not testing against the deck.
Yeah, there definitely is that sort of advantage that you get taking a rogue list to an event like this. We definitely saw it in Lille, where the meta was quite diverse, but I think that advantage is even more pronounced in a meta like this, but is more homogenous, because most people are only expecting to play the big 4 decks, so to have to play into green-purple, especially as you say, Pixelborn is down, I'm doubting very, very few of your opponents had practice in that matchup and knew the lines. Whereas in stark contrast, you had practice, a lot of practice into all of their decks.
That's 100% correct. One of the reasons I continued playing the deck is because I found success against at least 2 of the top 4 decks, especially being red purple and the red blue. And on the other hand, I also got to experience that green steel is a really, really bad matchup. Such a bad matchup, which hasn't been in set 3. I think there was no matchup in set 3 that was as bad as the green steel matchup is in set 4.
Yeah, what is it that makes it so different? Obviously, there's the Bucky discard, but are they more able to control the board than they used to?
So one thing that's really dangerous is Diablo. Because we as green-purple don't have good answers, like clean answers, like a Baboom, like a Brawl, to the green bird, and therefore he is most likely to do a lot of troubles. I mean, we have a few tools against it. I will go deeper when we talk about the list I brought. But in general, it's not an easy way to remove Diablo, which is really bad. So once they start drawing a lot of cards, you lose your identity as a deck, as a deck that gets card advantage, that draws in the mid game with Rabbit, and therefore out-resource your opponent, basically. So they can do that too. What also hurts is them singing songs and generating tempo with that. We don't have songs that do that. They have the damage songs, like Let the Storm Rage On, for example. And yeah, Bucky as well. They trim your hand, and even though in other matchups you do it by yourself, trimming your own hand, playing out your cards until turn 4, Rabbit or Dolores, you don't have control over that, and therefore you will be empty-handed, and most likely are not even able to draw new cards without get them their cards as well with Diablo.
Yeah, so I mean, with the matchup being that bad, what sort of advice would you give to play to your outs and be able to win even in quite an unfavored scenario?
So unfortunately, one thing you have to accept is that there are lines you can't beat. For example, a Shift Diablo line with Bucky, even with the song, is literally unbeatable. So you have to mulligan and think about hands that are beatable and try to do it like this. For example, that's already a deck choice for my specific list for Bochum, but I didn't play the Peter Pan Shadow, even though it would be a good answer into Diablo. But I know that this specific line is so bad that even Peter Pan Shadowfinder will not make it really better. And you have to accept that there is these kinds of lines that you are not able to beat. And on the other hand, you know how you can beat them. For example, if they are slow, they're a slow deck when it comes to board presence, for example. So you can try to quick lore in the beginning. I, for example, won a game in Bochum because I had a 3 Murfolk opener and was able to close out the game very quick. I think that's the best shot you have, because once they get into the 5 ink range and play their beasts, they outvalue you no matter what. They're just
Yeah.
and yeah, so be fast. And use the Queen of Hearts, which I play in my deck, to your advantage to snipe out mini Robin Hood with Pegasus, or even a Diablo as a surprise factor, and yeah, kind of win in the first like 4 turns. With Kit is also a great option as a tempo swing. For example, they can't shift Diablo and play it for 3, and you give it back with Kit. That's a big tempo loss for them. So yeah, basically, if
So, sorry, just to go back to the Queen of Hearts, I was actually going to ask about this later in the tech card section, but since you brought it up now, that's one of the cards that really stood out to me, but I couldn't visualize how it had a high impact in this deck. Because to me, it's quite a niche prerequisite that isn't always going to fire, which would be fine, but because it's uninkable, if you're in a scenario where it doesn't have use, does the card feel like it's, bricking your hand a little bit?
So the thing is, with Queen of Hearts, it's one of the techs I found against Diablo, which is not that bad in other matchup. For example, Peter Pan
Hmm.
Shadowfinder will sit dead in your hand against Red Blue. Like, he has no single use. Maybe singing friends from the other side, but obviously you always want to play other cards than him.
Yeah.
Queen of Hearts, in comparison, is a good card still in other matchups just because she quests for 2. Basically just like a Flynn Rider, which you always play on 2, so her uninkability doesn't hurt so much because you want to play this card on 2. You are not mad playing this card on 3 either, with, for example, a 1-drop, so it doesn't get stuck in your hand most of the time. It can happen.
Just for anyone who hasn't seen the card before, because I know I haven't seen it since I played Sealed, it is a 2-cost uninkable 1/2 quest for 2 with the ability when you play this character deal 1 damage to chosen damaged opposing character.
Correct. Yes. And besides that, it's also a good surprise factor in 2-game format, because 2-game format, most of the
Hmm.
time, if you have not like the best counter matchup, it's most of the time a 1/1, which can go to your 2/0 if you either are better than the opponent. For example, evening out the advantage they get on the play. If you're better and know what to do on the draw, for example, you can get around that, and you can always surprise them too. Like, they think they know their lines, they do their plays, but you do something they are not expecting, and then catch them off guard and win the game from there. So she did do this for me in the challenge, and 2 of my friends brought the deck as well, and they also told me that the Queen of Hearts has won them games because of that.
Yeah, that is a really interesting point to bring up with 2-game format specifically, which really rewards polarizing matchups and polarizing outcomes, because you want those 2-0s that give you that extra bonus point to be more likely to make cut. And I think the idea of abandoning beating that, certain nuts line with Diablo that you just don't have answers to, and instead investing it in cards that can help you 2-0 other matchups, or even just be a surprise factor in that Diablo matchup, is a really, really smart choice. But I think a lot of players are too cautious to make because they prefer the safety of having balanced and even matchups.
Yeah, exactly. I remember talking to Earlmeister after the first challenge in Lille, and I think he went with 8 draws, and he said that his list and his style of play in this specific event, because it was the first time playing 2-game format, was too like solid and not trying to risk something. And
Mm.
yeah, yeah, and that's something I took and tried to forge my plan for the Bochum challenge around it, because I think it's really true. If you're a really good player and you have a solid list and you do your solid, you still have to do more than just solid lines of play to get a 2-0, because your
Yeah.
opponent will always be on the play as well, which most of the time is an advantage.
I mean, now that we're talking about 2-game format, yet another section I was saving for later, but a really interesting point to bring up is with 2-game format strategy and the way we think about playing differently compared to best of 3, first thing I want to say is when you win the dice roll, do you choose to go first, or do you choose to go second first?
Yeah, I definitely choose to go first. The reason behind
Mm,
that, because I have such a potential explosive start with my deck, and most of the decks that play against me are just overrun by it. And that's why I want to keep the information for me going first sealed. What am I playing? So they don't keep their third removal, for example, or their second removal. And that helps me taking over the game fast. And if I'm on the draw and I know the information of my opponent, that's also really good for my deck, because we have different, especially on the 3 ink slot, we have different answers. Even though we are mostly
mm.
the deck that wants to ask the questions, we can also answer really good with Fox, Kit, and Crab. And if I know what my opponent is playing, I can mulligan better if I on the draw.
Yeah, I mean, that's very similar to my reasoning. The reasoning for me specifically is a bit more general. It's not deck specific, but as we've talked about, you need to overcome that on the draw disadvantage, sorry, to go 2-0. And I would rather apply that information advantage to my game on the draw than the game I'm already favored to win on the play.
Yeah, yeah, that's yeah. I can see that too. Um, for example, Merfolk into Merfolk 1-drop is something that most of the decks just can't beat if they mulligan against it, and if they blind mulligan, they want to be as good into both against control and against aggro as well. So they try to find a middle ground, and that's where you catch them off guard.
The other argument I've heard for aggro decks specifically, because I normally do think it is better to go first. The other argument I've heard for aggro decks is that because it's such an explosive deck, a fast deck, if you choose to go second first, your opponent might not be able to mulligan for you in the form of the Boom, Fire the Cannons, Brawl, any early aggressive curbing cards. And you'll be able to win off of that information, more fog of war, lack of information advantage. And then when you go second and your opponent does know the deck you're on, then hopefully you can still win off of the on the play tempo advantage because you're running such a fast deck. What do you think of that strategy compared to the one you chose for an aggro deck?
I can definitely see it too. I think specifically for green purple, where we are able to answer as well. I
Mm.
like to know what I want to answer, so I like to have information going second. Because if we go second, we most likely need to answer because they start their game a turn earlier, or they can start off the game, and probably that's an interesting a choice to do for example, yellow purple, where you're just straightforward trying to be aggressive questing. So I can see it for that, but for
Yeah,
my
because
decks, yeah,
with yellow purple, you don't really care about your opponent's game plan. You're just hoping they can't answer yours. Whereas with green purple, you're saying that you want that information for the reactive play.
exactly. And if you're
Mm.
yellow purple and you choose to go second first, you can still have your explosive opener, and it doesn't matter going second. And then after that, if you go first, you don't care about your opponent having the information what you are playing, because you will do the same plays anyway, the same
Yeah.
lines anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, so while we're on the note of 2-game format, uh, after attending both Lille and Bochum, I still can't say it properly.
Yeah.
What do you think of 2-game format overall compared to best of 3?
So 2 times, and I had a good tournament in Lille as well. I got into round 9, being able to do day 2 with a 2-0. Unfortunately, I didn't do it, but
Mm.
I played tops there too. So I'm on the side of having a lot of 2-0s. So I think I need to have a tournament where I start off with a lot of draws too, to talk negatively about it. But from my
Yeah, that's a
experience.
very good point you bring up. I'm very pro two game format still, but I also haven't experienced that feeling of just getting like 5 draws in a row.
Yes, I like the point that we are not that depending on a die roll anymore, dice roll.
Yeah.
As I said, in a two-game format is, I think, skill rewarding in the fact that if you know what you have to do, being on the play and on the draw, you can with skill beat your opponent 2 times. While in best of 3, if your opponent has the opportunity to go first 2 times, for example, it's statistically harder to abuse your or to use your skill to beat them even on the play,
Mm.
because it's 2 times. I personally like the two-game format. I find it very exciting to also have it influencing the deck choices, the tech choices also. You need a lot of meta reading there, anticipation. For example, I told to myself that green purple is not good against green steel, but I on average expected like 3 to maximum 4 times in a tournament, and this plan
Mm.
uh, worked because in the Swiss rounds I only faced 3 green steel, and yeah, a lot of preparation went into the plan of the DLC, and I like the two-game format very much. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of it as well. Especially with the idea of matchups. You're saying, hey, into my bad matchups, if I can 1-1, I'm happy. If I can 2-0, I'm ecstatic. And then all of my favorite matchups and my even matchups, I want to try my best to 2-0.
Yeah.
I think it adds some interesting strategy there. I do think the bonus point though, not a big fan of it. I think it makes ties feel worse than they should as a player. Ties feel closer to a loss than a tie, and I think that's problematic. But other than that, I've been a big fan of how two-game format has affected things like die roll advantage, and really just it's felt more positive to me overall. There's no incentive to stall for time. You're usually ending without going overtime. I've only gone overtime once in two-game
Hmm.
format, and that's because I milled my opponent. And yeah, you get some really interesting strategic and deck choice decisions.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. If you don't have, sorry, you also have a bit more of a break. For example, on an aggro
Yeah,
deck in general, I do have, I'm done quicker with my games than, for example, my friend playing Blue Steel. But even in a two-game format, Blue Steel can like round up the round in with 10 or 20 minutes spare. And I think in a tournament
yeah.
setting where you have to play 9 rounds, it's really nice to have a bit more time to breathe.
Oh, absolutely. In set champs, I would always have max 5 minutes before the next round. But in two-game format, I would always have enough time to go refresh myself, get some water, have some fresh air.
Yeah,
Just yeah, really really nice as a tournament experience overall. A lot less
100%.
draining. Okay, so
Yeah.
just to circle back into our main topic of talking about your deck
Mhm.
and green purple. So I know we talked about how green steel was a banned matchup, and we've talked about your thoughts going to two-game formats with matchups. How is green purple's matchup spread overall, especially into the big four decks?
Mhm. So the best matchup we have is red purple, because we kind of want to do the same as red purple wants to do. We want to play a lot with card advantage. We both have the purple package where we have the rabbit. We can bounce the rabbit. We can draw with friends. We have cards like Maleficent technically, or the one drops Chatterbox Followers. So we want to keep our resources good and healthy while also
Mm,
progressing into the lore game, and then finish off the game with gold most of the time. What they have more than we do is removal, but their removal just comes later in the game, not in the first turns.
mm,
And we, in comparison, have a lot of quick questers for in comparison to them. So we need to make sure that we are ahead in lore in the first few turns. I think like 4 to 5. Then we both sides start bouncing their rabbits and start to generating cards again. Because my plan for my deck in general is I want to empty the hand as as effective as possible before redrawing with the rabbit. It's a bit volatile plan because you need to take care that your rabbit doesn't get killed and then you're off to a
Yeah.
top deck war. But yeah, so we both want to do the same thing, but I think we in comparison are a bit better because B prep, which a really good card, which they do have, also kills their board as well. So we can then lay something on there too. We know that card is in there. We can steal it with Ursula. So I think this is our best matchup. I think I played 3 red purple or 4 red purple in the 2 out everyone.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After that, I think the second best matchup from the top 4 is against red purple I anticipated 2-0. There was a strong argument.
Yes. So so your 2-game format strategy, Emerald Steel, you want to try and 1-1, red purple, you expect 2-0.
Yeah, I expect to 0-0 against green steel. Unfortunately, I think 1-1 is the goal. I think 2-0 is like 5%. It's almost impossible. But I managed to beat or to 1-1 to green steel while losing 1-0-2. So that's a plan there. You need to know what you're doing so you can go into like small niche situations you can get to win out. Then we have red blue, which in my opinion is like a 1.5 to 0.5 ratio. So most of the time, not most of the time we 2-0, but most of the time we 1.5 to 0.5, if that makes sense. I kind of evaluate those matches like this. So while
1.5 to 0.5. Sorry, I don't quite understand. What are those numbers referring? What are they referring to?
so that's the on we don't 2-0 on average and we don't 1-1 on average. We maybe that's something I just do, but for me that's an indicator. We have a higher chance of 2-0ing them, while not most likely. I don't know how to say it, but
So you're saying like the matchups are quite like they're quite polarizing. Either you completely stomp them or they stomp you.
so I
But
think
more often you're stomping them.
with let's say we are on the play and have a good hand, we win. They are on the play and have a good hand and they win. But
Yeah.
we have a bit more chances of beating a good hand from them than they have beating a good hand from us. If that
Right, I
makes
see.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
so that's why I'm landing on not 2-0 on average, but 1.5 to 0.5 on average, kind of.
Okay.
Okay.
I understand.
The reason we are so good into red blue is that they want to set up in the first turns where we want to pressure. And that's the game plan for this matchup as well. We want to hinder them setting up their ink, their draw engine. We want to make them play as suboptimally as they can because of course if we hit like turn 7 or something, the game just gets really really hard for us. But we should be able to be in a good position or a good enough position to then, even though it's hard, close out the game in like 4 to 5 turns with a bit of drawing with Rabbit and Dolores, and then the normal goat finisher as everyone knows it. And the fourth top 4 deck, Blue Steel, I think it's kind of the other way around. I think on average it's actually a 1-1 because in comparison to Red Blue, if they're on the play and they have a good hand, I think we are less likely beating a good hand from Gray Blue compared to a good hand from Red Blue. Because of the steel removal they have, which is and Tinkerbell, which is a bit better than the red removal against us. And yeah, that's why I think it's a 1-1 matchup, and they have a slightly higher chances of 2-0ing us because they can also on the draw with the steel removal get back into the game if we don't have like the best start. And that's where I were in this order. Red purple really good. Red blue is also good to really good. Then we have the 1-1 matchup blue steel, and unfortunately the green steel one. But yeah, that's a
But
gamble.
Blue
Yeah.
Steel, do you think you would find the wheel version or the no wheel version a more difficult matchup?
I think the wheel version is a more difficult matchup because once they
Hmm.
refill their hand and they already were able to ramp up in ink, they can with a fresh hand. They don't have to work for their new hand. They can just sing a whole new world, have 7 fresh new cards, and play off that. Also, whole new worlding us is good for them when we, for example, have a mediocre hand and need to draw early. They just deny our draw.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, and definitely, I would think that too, because I think the wheel version has a lot more access to removal. It gets that removal earlier as well, so it
Mhm.
makes sense. But even if you're refilling the hand, especially because if your game plan is to dump hand and then rebuild resources, well, once you've dumped your hand, do you rebuild resources? Because it might get wheeled away. It makes that decision a lot more difficult.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've talked about this already, but on your Twitter, it says you're a bounce enjoyer. So you've played green purple a lot then. Would you say it's your favorite deck because you played it in set 3 too?
Yeah, green purple is my favorite deck. I in set 2 where there were no like real competitive tournaments, I used to play green yellow discard, a bit more of a gimmicky
Hmm.
niche, not really good deck, but fortunately
But
for
I know a really good player that also played green yellow discard in set 2 when I played blue steel. And then in set 3, they picked up green purple and went top 32 with it in Lille. So it seems like all the green yellow discard players moved to green purple.
maybe yeah, that's a funny story
Yeah.
because it's the same for me. Green purple is my favorite deck. I just love being able to, on the one hand, pressure a lot. I can also win the resource system. Um, and then again, I can also answer stuff. I'm not like yellow purple who has to watch their opponent doing stuff. I can also
Hmm.
interact with my opponent. And that's what I love to. It feels very dynamic. You can do a lot of stuff. It's also very hard to pilot. I think in set 4, it's even harder to pilot than in set 3 because since you are like that flexible, um, you always want to keep up your flexibility. If I play against red purple, even though the crab, Merlin crab, is not like a really good card, and most of the time I just want to ink it away to get one more ink, compared to, or for example, inking a Dolores. I have to keep it in hand because if the caster comes down, I have the perfect answer. And this flexibility I only have because I know what I need in certain situations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one of those decks, alongside red, purple, and blue steel, that I consider to be one of the highest skill expression wise. Because obviously, every deck takes skill to play, but there's some decks that it's quite obvious when you don't know how to play them because there seems to be more of a skill flaw than anything.
Yeah, I also think it's Lorcana doesn't only happen on the board and on the law counter, but especially in the resource management.
Mm,
Starting from Mulligan, which is really rewarding if you do it correctly because it's so overpowered compared to other TCGs. For example, in
yeah.
Magic, you lose one card, and we can just freely mulligan. So that's already a really skillful choices you can do. And then, as I said, like I would rather, for example, not ink a card than inking the crap in the scenario I just described because it would lose me the game instantly if the castle comes down. So
Yeah.
Lorcana is a hard game.
Inking is such a cool aspect of the game. I definitely agree with you. The mulligan, the fact that it's so strong, not only gives you more space to express your strategical thinking and skill, but it also just means you get more playable games. Like one of the worst feelings in a card game is bricking,
Yeah.
and thanks to how powerful the mulligan is, we can balance the card game around everyone getting powerful and consistent hands.
Yeah, totally agree. That's why I love to. Oh, okay. I love it so much. I also gives you a lot of opportunities for deck building, inkability,
Yes.
uninkability, and makes the game really diverse. Also, yeah.
Yeah, very fluid with the deck building, especially. No, I mean, I know some people look at the blue steel uninkable counts, look at 17 uninks, and we go, "Whoa, how do you run so many?" But the best part about it is it's not just about the uninkability ratio, but also what uninkable cards you're running. So obviously, a card like Be Prepared, which sits in your hand the whole game and can get discarded, is a lot scarier of an uninkable than a card like Five of Cannons, which you can dump
Yeah.
out on turn 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, best example is Merfolk. I had a
Mm.
discussion with someone yesterday, and they told me, yeah, I have so many uninkables in hand, and I'm like, okay, or in deck in general, and I can't break because of that. And I said, yeah, I have uninkables in my deck as well, but they immediately go out anyway, so I don't really
Yeah, I
run.
mean, if you're playing an uninkable card every single time on curve, then it's not really taking away from your decisions if it's already your best choice.
Yeah, and it most of the time is your best choice because the cost uninkables pay for being uninkable, or the
Mm.
price you get for it being uninkable is there are good cards.
Except for Hercules. Don't know why that card's an
Which one? Sorry, the
Hercules, the 7/3 uh 5-mana uninkable
oh,
rush.
it's yeah, the Maui which can kill the castle. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the uninkable Maui that can kill a castle and doesn't live any trade.
Yeah, some choices are, but probably we will have more interaction with uninkables, and we already see with the new
Mm.
Mufasa we can.
Inkcaster,
Yeah, the
yeah,
Inkasa, yeah,
Moonflash, yeah.
in this set, for example, yeah, and
Mm.
really interesting. I'm sure they can go into a lot of directions with this resource system and play with it.
Yeah, especially now we're starting to get interaction with the Inkwell, as you said with Mufasa, is super, super interesting. I can't wait to see that be explored more, hopefully even in set 5 itself.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
All right, so let's move on to a new section of the interview. We're going to, we've already talked about the Queen of Hearts, but going into tech cards, I wanted to ask, is Diablo still effective without the shift mechanic and Bucky discard interaction? Do you not find with the whole of the meta being built around removing Diablo that you don't often get value from it when playing it on curve on 10-3?
Yes, I anticipated a lot of tech cards against Diablo. What I always say is if I play Diablo in 3, we are on the draw now, for example, against Red Purple,
Hmm.
and they have the best answer, which is Brawl. They still have to use a whole turn, they still have to use a whole card. So in card advantage, you go 0 because
Hmm.
they have to pay a card, you played Diablo, and they start playing suboptimally because on 4 they have to brawl. Like Diablo is a card, if unanswered, can literally win the game on its own. And that's the
Yeah.
reason I play Diablo in this deck, even though it's uninkable. The reason why I'm playing 3 is because I want to keep Diablo in my mulligan most of the time. And I experienced if I don't have the shift target and I play 4 Diablos, there will be situations in which you have the second or third Diablo, and then you
Hmm.
brick too hard to recover from the game because it's the best use is to play it on 3. You already have pressure on board, so them using a whole turn benefits you because you can use the things you have developed before again, for example. And
Whereas later on, they can more efficiently just 2-for-1 you with 2 cards in one turn.
yeah, for example, if I set up Merfolk into Flynn and we play the Diablo, they on 3 can't play a character to then in the next turns challenge my board. They have to play the Brawl. And yeah, I can run away, for
Yeah,
example,
and then
with
you get
this
to maintain the
Diablo.
tempo with the Murfolk and the Flynn. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I can see your reasoning for the
The
card definitely.
scariest thing is songs, because they can take out the Diablo without losing
Mm,
tempo. But currently, the as far Amber Steel is a thing too, but beside that,
yeah,
it's only Green Steel, which is not a great matchup for us anyway. So that's the risk I took there. I still think it's
let,
completely
let the
necessary.
Storm of Rage on being the worst one because it
Yeah,
doesn't even spend a card. It doesn't spend the ink. It doesn't spend the card because it draws a card.
it's
That's a crazy efficient answer.
so crazy. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And you can like try to snipe it before, but for example, I've tested a bit of green yellow right now, and they have brand necessity, so you can with your own Diablo
Yeah.
kill the answer to Diablo. But yeah, to answer your question, to summarize it, it's definitely a really really good card in this deck. As I said, we have a good card advantage, resource management, and because of Diablo, if he goes off, we can even be better on that. And he just runs away with games. He can run away with games.
Yeah, Ben Necessities is insane in green yellow. I just want to bring that up because I played against it with blue steel, and I was like, great, I have answers to
Hmm.
Diablo. They shift Diablo, Bucky, discard, and then they and then they sung the bare necessities to get rid of the fire the cannons answer. I was like, okay, well at least I can still ramp. And then they sung another bare necessities the next turn to get rid of my quill.
Yeah, by necessities is really really good, picking off not only songs but and also you can play it for free in the same. Yeah, I've that's the second deck I've played instead for the green
Hmm.
yellow one, so I could talk on that as well.
Well, we're keeping it to green purple for this video. If I see you top at Bologna with green yellow, then we can talk about
That's a
green
nice
yellow.
motivation to top to top Bologna.
Yeah. Okay, so next card that's really interesting to me because I have not, I have not tested this card at all. I haven't been playing green purple. How impactful is Ursula Sea Witch Queen? It's definitely a card that has been really overlooked this set, was hyped a bit in spoilers, but I haven't seen it had much impact. How have you been finding playing with it?
So she's good in some matchups and not that good in other matchups, while being a okay play in most of the situations. You have to be careful with her because if you, for example, play against red and you overextend into playing her on 5, you can get punished pretty easily for that. Also, the red blue, for example, has a really nice way with Ice Block and Medusa to clear her off. So you have to be careful with her. What she
Mm,
does well is giving you instant 2 lore if you have the Ursula on board. So most of the time, it's more about her being a high quester and have a relatively big body. Because if we um, demand answer from our opponents in the first few turns, they most of the time don't have good or efficient removal anymore, and that's where she can close out some games. She has a nice synergy with your own Diablo, which is pretty niche. But if you have her on board and you play Diablo, you can exert him the same turn he's played. That was also a really nice experience. I was also a bit scared for Amber Steel being represented in the Bochum challenge, and she's the
mm,
main game winner against that deck. And because she's inkable, that's the reason I played her 3 times. I can see her being cut down to 2, but you will also have games in which you will be on 7 ink, so you can actually hardcast her. You don't need to shift target. And those games are, as I said, most likely both your opponent doesn't have a lot of cards in hand because he was you demanded a lot of answers from them.
yeah.
They weren't able to refill the hand, for example, and then, as I said, she can close out games. She's a big body. She also comes as a surprise because even though people know she exists, they can't really play around her. They don't really want to kill your 1/3 Ursula suboptimally just to avoid the big Ursula. And yeah, the effect of not being able to sing for both players is not bad for you because you literally just, or we don't just run 4 songs, which I most of the time sung before, and that's a really nice way in an even game state to hinder your opponent of getting tempo by songs. So she works really great. I would still bring her after this experience in Bochum. I really like her. She's also inkable, so
Yeah,
um,
no, the inkability is definitely. I mean, you should never be like, well, I can still play this card because it's inkable, but at least if it's a tech card that you're including from a certain matchup, you can ink it in the matchups where it's not relevant. Really good example of this is Argus and Blue Steel. A 4/1 is
yeah,
terrible into most matchups, but game changing into red purple.
exactly. She can be game changing in the Embassy matchup and in some situations which just happen in between games. If you take away the possibility for your opponent to sing a song, which can you don't have to you don't have to shift her to be able to get that effect. For example, with Diablo, you shift and you exert to get the effect. You can just play her on 7, and
Yeah.
I also like disturbing lines from my opponents. For example, they plan turns ahead.
Disturbing lion?
Lines.
Oh,
Sorry.
lines. Sorry, in my head I was thinking Mufasa, Simba, lions.
Oh yeah, I forgot we were playing a game with a lot of different animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really effective that if your opponent plans a few turns ahead and we do something that stops them from doing so. Mini Ursula is a good example for that too. If we before they can grab your sword, play Mini Ursula. For example, sometimes against Blue Steel, I'm that far ahead on board that I rather play an Ursula Mini uh, instead of a castle. Like really niche situations, but
Yeah.
those exist, and the big Ursula, by hindering your opponent to sing, can serve a purpose like this.
Right, very nice. Actually, talking about being able to play inkable tech cards, I want to get your opinions on this. I think that is probably the biggest reason in Lorcana why I do not want sideboards. I know many people call for sideboards. I think in general, sideboards homogenize metas because they reduce the need to, they increase the ability for the best deck to tech for multiple matchups. But especially in Lorcana, the cost of a card is whether it's inkable or not, whether it's effective in a matchup, which is really important when you're restricted to a 60 card list. If you could play more cards and just swap them in and out and still maintain that 60 card consistency, then it kind of takes away from that cost benefit analysis you get from an inkable versus uninkable tech card.
I agree. Also, we have a lot of polarizing text in Lorcana, and I think a sideboard would just enable. I mean, that's probably the reason.
You'd just be able to play a hate card without the downside of playing a hate card being bad in other matchups.
Yes, that's. I would put like 3 Peter Pan Shadowfinder into my sideboard to then
just swap it in the moment you see red purple.
Yeah, no, swap it out when I see red purple and swap it in when I see green steel, because this card is.
Sorry, yeah, for
No,
Diablo.
don't worry, don't worry.
Yeah.
That would be really, really good. I don't think it would benefit Lorcana having a sideboard. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I got confused in my head because it's red purple that plays the shadow for the green steel matchup.
Correct, exactly.
Final question of the tech card section. This is one of my favorite ones. Is if you could turn back time and go and submit your deck list again on Saturday morning for Bochum, what cards would you change? Which underperformed, which overperformed, and what kind of ratio adjustments might you make?
So one card which probably is angry at me because I took him out the days before the tournament is Pegasus, the big one.
It's always the changes you make days before the tournament that ruin you. My changes 2 days before the tournament ruined me.
I have to say that before the set championship, which I unfortunately placed 11 with a top 8 card, but I sat there the day before, took a look at my deck list. I physically put the cards on the table and looked at every card, and I was like, no, to be honest, I don't want to change something because this is crafted together. And I'm still think that every decision there is correct, and in this 60 you can play the 60. But what's really nice about green purple is that with just -1 crap +1 kit, for example, you get cards, you get nice answers in other matchup, which makes them better. And so I wouldn't change it because my anticipation of the meta and the decks played are the results this list is as it is. I would change it if for example, if I expect a lot of less green
Sorry, you
steel.
said you'd change your Pegasus earlier. Is that so? You'd add another large Pegasus?
Yeah, that was my introduction because in the tournament, I don't really like one-offs, but Pegasus is one-off in this deck because I saw that I don't really have lines where I want to play him. I rather draw into him and play him because he's good in the scenario because I drew into him. But normally playing lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He wasn't that good.
Yeah, that's very similar to how I look at ratios often when deck building, is I sort of see 4 ofs as on curve early game, 3 ofs as maybe something I want to be able to mulligan for or mid game, 2 ofs as like tech cards and then one-ofs as something I just want to see late game. Like I want it to be unlikely to draw early on.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think if I put 3 copies in it, I see the card 1 time in on average every game. If I don't hard money it. But yeah, I think I would try to put in a second Pegasus. Even though the second
Yeah.
one would also be drawn or only be played if I draw into it. I think it's a good card. Also a card I'm debating of changing or not is Pascal on the 2 of 1 slot. Because I like Pascal. I think it's a big reason we're that good into red purple as well, because he helps generating the early law I was talking about to finish off the game with gold. Pegasus and Pascal in combination, they don't have an answer for that, and they quest for free 3. But if you, for example, expect more of blue steel, it's better to put in a Chernobog's follower to get in more consistency. I think those are the things I was thinking about. Other than that, I'm pretty happy still with the list. I'm a
And
big
it seems like you made the right choice because there was a much higher representation of red purple than there was blue steel.
yeah. I anticipated it as well. I was like, those 2 decks will be the most played, but I don't know how the spread was in the whole tournament actually. But maybe green steel was even a bit more.
It was red purple most, then green steel,
In
then red blue,
Top
then
cut
blue
or in
steel.
general?
Oh, in general.
Okay, yeah,
In Top
okay.
Cut, it was different.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah. So summarizing this, I mean, if you don't want to snipe off the Diablo with the queen, you can change her, but I haven't elaborated on that. She's also like so good in other situations. For example, your Fox can kill off a beast, set hero, a Tinkerbell. You have Smee, which often lays there with just 1 damage on it. She's completely polarizing in the Mufasa red yellow matchup, which I unfortunately haven't met in Bochum, but yeah, I'm still a big fan of her.
Okay, so we are nearing that 1 hour mark, but I'm trying to keep these interviews too. So let's segue into our final 2 topics.
I've just
I've
noticed.
got a very juicy one.
Just noticed it got a bit dark in here. I think you can see in the video that it gets a bit darker and darker. But
for me, it has just started raining, and I'm going out with friends for birthday drinks in a bit, so that's not a good sign. It's raining a lot.
I hope you planned on
Hopefully, it ends by tomorrow.
going indoor and not outdoor.
Yeah. Hopefully, it should be indoor. We'll just have to travel through the outdoor to get to the indoor. All right. So, firstly, well, I'll save the juiciest topic for the end. But the first one I want to bring up while we're still talking about cards is how do you think building for set champs versus challengers is? Has your deck adapted much for set champs this weekend?
So I played the same 60 as I said. I knew that my local game store has a really high representation of green steel, so I was a bit like, how do you say, black-eyed, a bit naive, still bringing it.
A bit naive.
Naive, still bringing it. So my advice, if you think about playing green purple in set champs, you have to ask yourself how the representation of green steel is, because if it's that high, even though you can dodge them in Swiss, you face them in top 8, and they in a best of 3, even on the draw, are really favored against you. But on the other hand, a friend of mine visited set champs where there were a lot of red purple. So if you anticipate that, I can actually recommend playing green purple.
Well, I should have brought your deck, because I was hoping for a 50-50 split of green steel and red purple, and it was like 2/3 red purple and like 10% green steel. It was terrible for my deck. I mean, a couple, a red fosser to rub salt in the wound for choosing blue steel.
It's always a gamble, right? As I said, I think it's good and healthy to gamble in a 2-game format, where you can where you need the 2 O's, you need the polarizing matchups. So it's definitely.
But then set champs, you'd maybe go for a bit more consistency.
Yeah, because you play less rounds, and it's a smaller amount of people. I don't really know how.
You're much more prone to variance as well. Yeah. And you should hopefully have more ability to know what your local meta is going to be, especially if it's a nearby game store, and you should be able to prep for that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the final topic, just because we're very limited on
Mm-hmm.
time, is the juiciest one of all. Post-Bucky nerf errata,
Oh,
especially for the players who are going to be playing set 4, from after August 9th, because it will be within the 3 weeks release of set 5 Shimmering Skies. So firstly, I want to talk about how do you think that changes Green Purple's prospects with no green steel in the meta?
so we will definitely rise up in a tier. I'm pretty sure we will be one of the top four. I heard, I think Moyen in Podcana saying that he doesn't think that Green Steel is dead and there will be other iterations without Bucky. And there are right now there is stuff in there besides Bucky that is scary for us. So
Mm.
there is a possibility it's still a good deck against us. We have to see
But
that.
if
But
anything, the knee-jerk reaction to the errata might mean even if there is good stuff, there's not enough time to explore it, and people won't
oh
want to
yeah,
risk exploring it for Toronto. So it should still give Green Purple really nice leverage into the
yeah,
meta anyway, representation-wise.
yeah, 100%. So red purple will be as represented as it ever was. So that's good for us. Red blue as well. I can imagine because people anticipate a rise in green purple that the blue steel decks will adapt a bit more into the anti-aggro direction. For example, a Captain
Yeah.
Hook on one is can change the matchup really drastically. I've seen avalances being played already.
Mm.
A few decks that have good tech cards against us will probably use them. I anticipate us being the top four instead of the green steel. We have to see which deck iterations of green steel will come out. Um, but yeah, I'm hopeful. Um,
Yeah. Hopefully, I would love to see a Green Purple on top 8. Have a Green Purple win a Mickey at Toronto. That would be beautiful.
Yeah, 100%. That would be. I'm in Birmingham as well, so I will play this
Mm.
meta in a regional too. Bologna first. Not sure, obviously, what I want to play, but I know myself, and I'm probably going back to green purple because I can play it in my sleep, which is which are which
Yeah, I think it's hard to make a switch, especially for us when we've already top cut
yeah
in pretty much the same meta. Like the meta didn't change much from Chicago to Bochum,
yeah.
which tells us that it's probably not going to change again going into Bologna, unless something crazy happens at Fort Worth this weekend.
I would also recommend in general play a deck you are very familiar with. Just
Mm.
don't just change because you think the deck X is good against deck Y and deck Y is represented a lot. You will not win because it's a good counter matchup. Your opponent knows that you're a good counter matchup and knows what to do to maybe get around this. And so I recommend in general play a deck you're familiar with, and you know your lines, you know your plays. And because my expectations going into these regionals is not like topping because it's you can't guarantee it, obviously, even if you're a good player. It's playing flawlessly, and I think I can only
Yeah.
guarantee it when I play a deck. I played a lot.
Although, as Moyen says, you can never play flawlessly. You can only play to the point where you didn't notice any obvious mistakes.
True, 100%. I can agree. I don't think because Lorcana is such a hard game. We talked about it.
Yeah.
Mulligan resource system. You definitely can't play flawlessly, but as flawless as possible, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at least making no mechanical errors and just knowing your general lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
As your chess openers, as Polkana would say, and then having your creativity apply in the later turns.
I agree. Yeah.
And with your resource management, right? As you say, with the inking and the mulligans.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think that's been a really interesting deep dive. Unfortunately, we got to wrap it up here. I'm going to see you in Bologna.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So that's going to be exciting. Hopefully, we can both make Top Cut again. And if you have anywhere you'd like to shout out, any content stuff, Twitter, anything where people can hear more about your green-purple adventures and how you're making the deck better, please do give that now.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me, Alphos. It was a pleasure to talk to
worries.
you. I love talking Lorcana. I love talking about the game. I love talking stuff that happens outside of the game, etc. So it was a pleasure. You can find me on Twitter. I refuse to say X. You can find me on Twitter. Bennet.
I will not say it either.
Yeah, Bennet _Lorcana. I use Twitter to interact with the community. I love the Lorcana community. I also use Twitter to share my thoughts on the game, share deck lists. And I have a YouTube link to that, but it's not active, so there's no need in promoting it now. But if you follow me on Twitter, you will see it anyway. So yeah, that's it from me.
Perfect. And as for me, I have my own shout out to do. But first, thank you so much for being on. It's been a pleasure. Great to talk about green purple, especially as it's a deck I haven't played often, have much experience myself, but it looks very, very fun. So I'm probably going to give it a spin if I can ever get my hands on those expensive green birds. So I'm sad that you told me they are actually useful in the deck.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as for my own shout out, since top 64 at Bochum, I feel comfortable enough that I can give value once again in coaching. So if you're looking to win some set championships, build your card game fundamentals, or even top cut at a Disney Lorcana challenge yourself, head over to my Discord, open up a ticket, and we can talk about having a coaching session for you. All right, sweet. Well, thank you for being on, Bennett.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Alphas.
and I'll see you in Bologna.
Yeah, we'll see you there too. Goodbye.
Very cool. Bye-bye, guys. Hope you enjoyed.